Thank you very much. So I asked Bill a question that probably some of you are thinking of if you're totally into that world, which I find to be very interesting. So supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting.
Get the right folks who could.
Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number on the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful.
Oh, hey there, boys and girls. I didn't see you sitting over there. What is this? I'm glad you asked. I was just watching a video of our mega idiot number 45, empty orange pumpkin head, game show host, our cartoon president, dumb Donald J. Trump. In January 28th, his Security Council informed him of an outbreak of a coronavirus based on information shared by the Chinese government. Early February, he sat down with Bob Woodard, an American journalist who has now published a book called Rage, and over 19 interviews that were recorded, 9 hours, 10 months, we now know he knew the coronavirus was more infectious and more deadly. He knew it wasn't like the common flu. And he knew that people would get infected and die. But yet, he had another coronavirus briefing where he lied directly to the American public's face. And he said that when the number's at 15, it just automatically goes down to 0 and then magically disappears. But people still got infected and people still died. He came back and still continued to promote at these briefings unproven, non-scientific coronavirus cures. And now, 40 plus days before our November 3rd election, he's promoting a vaccine. He knows when a vaccine will absolutely be ready, because us, the general public, we know too that it needs to be safe and effective. That any vaccine that we take must be safe and effective and proven that way. But according to Donald J. Trump, he knows the vaccine will be ready right before the November election. Very coincidental. So what are we going to do today, boys and girls, since obviously vaccines are that easy to make? You guessed it, we're going to make a coronavirus vaccine. And let's use some of the coronavirus cures that our mega idiot has suggested. He started off at the first briefing with Clorox. He said that if you inject disinfectant into the skin, it gives a real thorough cleaning. And we're going to look into that. Fact check. If you inject yourself with disinfectant, you will actually die. It's already proven. It actually says it on the actual bottle. Do not ingest. But his followers, Trumpers, listened to him, called into the Center for Disease and Control and asked, is it okay for us to ingest disinfectant? No! But yet, we followed the stable genius, and this is one of his first pushed cures. So, what's going into our coronavirus vaccines? You guessed it, Clorox. When people still continue to die, people still continue to get infected, he came back and said, I have found a game changer. Gonna change the face of the entire pandemic. Hydroxychloroquine. Fact check. Hydroxychloroquine was a drug approved to treat malaria. It's safe and effective for malaria, not the coronavirus. We have to do way more testing to prove that it's even able to use it. But he said, I've been taking it for 2 weeks. What could it hurt? Well, a couple in Texas actually took a version of the hydroxychloroquine, but it happened to be fish tank cleaner. The wife died and the husband is in critical condition. But yet, the stable genes suggested it. So what are we going to do? Let's add hydroxychloroquine to our vaccine. Let's give our vaccine a little stir here. Yes. Nice. Very nice. All right. Let's see. There's something I'm missing. I know. Oh, he says, the mega idiot, if you blast the lungs with sun rays, that it also gives a thorough cleaning of the lungs. Fact check. You can't blast the body with sun rays. And if you did, it probably would alter your cells, causing cancer. Just completely ridiculous. But since our stable genes suggested it, let's go ahead, guys, and let's add some sun rays to our coronavirus vaccine. All right, let's give it a good stir here. Yes, I think we're great here. It's missing something. I know. I like my coronavirus vaccines with a little kick. So let's add some hot sauce. Yeah, little hot sauce to your coronavirus vaccine. There we go. I think we've done it. And boys and girls, voila, perfecto. Coronavirus vaccine. Yeah, no, that's just not how it's done. I am Pharaoh, and this is my podcast, Stay Woke. Today's segment or episode will be about the discovery, the development, the approval, and subsequent commercialization and release of coronavirus vaccines the right way. So I need each of you to come along with me, listen to our show. But you guys are starting to scare me a little bit. Some of you Trumpers follow him almost like a cult following number 45. And I remember very clearly, years back, Jim Jones was a preacher who led his congregation. And they had what they called a group suicide. And in that suicide, or in them doing suicide, they added poison to Kool-Aid. And they all drank the Kool-Aid and they died as a group. So all I got to say to that is, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Let's go.
Welcome, global citizens. My name is The Scribe, and I am here with my co-host, the Pharaoh, and this is our podcast, Stay Woke. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. It has been 6 months, I believe, Pharaoh, since our very first podcast. So we kind of took a little break, and now we're back. So if you haven't seen our prior podcast, please have a look, guys. Our first one was entitled Tinted and American Fuckery, the Homeless Crisis.
Viruses and vaccines.
Yes, and then we have viruses and vaccines. And our very last installment, actually, that we did was Black Men and Endangered Species, where we had our panelists and we were discussing topics like economics, politics, climate change, and social media and how that affects us. So today we have the Pharaoh here, and we're going back to viruses and vaccines. So, Pharaoh, what are we doing exactly today? Talk to me.
I mean, you know that our current mega idiot number 45 is promoting that a vaccine will be ready before November 3rd, which so happens to be prior to the election. So I just want to give the general public, I think if we arm them with knowledge and the ability to be able to understand what that means when I say a vaccine is ready for commercial distribution, like what does that mean? So let me ask you, Scribe, I mean, do you plan on getting the
Personally,
vaccine?
hell to the no. no, you know, I am not
Wow.
getting Trump's vaccine.
So
No, hell,
what is it? Is it a general distrust in the government or the science aspect of it?
both. Y'all are just shady. The scientists are shady. The
Wow.
politicians are
Wow.
shady. Like it's just a lot. It's a lot, and I don't trust none of it.
Is it because the current government has fused politics and science together that you're more distrustful, or were you always distrustful of? I mean, did you get vaccinated?
I got vaccinated but I was a kid. You know what I mean? So it was my parents'
Because your
decision
mom
to
forced
get
it
me.
on you?
Right, but I've also
Wow.
I've gotten my flu shots. Not so much in the past couple of years. So I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all. But it's this particular virus that I'm kind of skeptical about. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
because, like you said, they've kind of fused, the politics with this pandemic, and some are saying it's a
So
planned
vaccines, I'm
pandemic.
just trying to establish first, right? So vaccines or other flu shots, you were okay with. I mean, other like flu
I'm not
shots.
honestly, I'm not against vaccines. I don't have issues. I
Okay.
think there's value in getting vaccinated. I just really have an issue with this particular vaccine and all the issues surrounding it. I'm very skeptical as to why, and especially if someone's going to rush it to happen prior to the elections. It just seems like I don't want to go and say this was a pandemic, but it reeks. You know what I
Here
mean?
we go.
It
Here
reeks.
we go.
So
Yeah, but who's
something
planning
you
it?
can
Because what?
provide me and
Like going around. Who's planning that?
I mean, we can get into the
I mean,
conspiracies,
some
which
people think you think
I
the
don't. What
government
I think,
a collaboration between the government and the scientific community.
um, I think the 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 politicians are using the scientific community. Actually, no, I take that back. It's both. It's both because there's a lot of sciences that stand to profit and also
We don't know that for sure. I mean,
get recognized. I mean,
I'm
let's
not discounting there are probably some levels of corruption, but if you have a process or a system that allows vetting through some of the unsavory characters, if you may say, that may have other unethical options or ideas in mind. I'm just trying to say, for the sake of this argument, trying to not argument, but our episode, which is really to describe the vaccine process, is it possible we could segregate politics from science, or no?
I think ordinarily, if it were any other virus, maybe. But when it comes to the
What makes the
COVID,
coronavirus unique that you think that the scientific community will be collaborating in some kind of nefarious way with with politics in order to like overthrow the general population? I mean, I
it's
don't
just
know.
it's
I'm not trying to say that because I'm a scientist and I'm biased, but I just think the process is more rigorous than any individual. Although people can politicize it, I just think there's ways for us as the general public to always come back to the truth, right? Our whole podcast, Scribe, is about awareness and resolution. But obviously, there's some differences in thinking personally as we approach life. But I think that's the realness of what we talk about today. But yeah, go back and say, so I want to try to see before we get started if there's some way I can speak to the science piece of it, initially without politics. But I guess I can't, you can't guarantee me that, yeah?
no, I can't guarantee. There's been way too much fuckery that's happened from March till now. You know what I mean? And
It's fuckery now.
I'm not I don't trust the
All right.
government. I don't trust the
No, I get the
scientists.
general frustration. People, shit, we're in the midst of a pandemic. We got economic recess, we got racial unrest. I mean, yeah, 2020 is kind of,
Right. It's that year that
understood.
just won't let out. And so this is my hope, with this episode is that you can help me and some of our global citizens understand this process and what actually goes into, the production of a virus. Not a virus, I mean a vaccine. But I can't promise that I'll separate the two. They
I
just
know. I just want to go into with somewhat of an open mind initially, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
I'm open. I'm open.
yeah,
Not as open as you would like me to be, but I'm
no, I
open.
mean, an open mind with an understanding of our history, because I don't want our global citizens to think that we've left things out in order to just promote the vaccine. Of course, like, we both are working on this podcast, and I'm a scientist and you have a very different view, but that's the beauty of, I think, why we work together. It's not just one kind of collective thought, although our mission to share information openly is the same, right? So full disclosure, so vaccines in the past, and I know there's a couple of things that people are very aware of. The Tuskegee incident when they injected, black men over a period of time with the syphilis virus. These were clinical trials that the government was performing without any actual protocols or things in place, but not to make excuses, and for years, those men were affected by being injected with syphilis. And of course, and I'm just going to read here, the polio virus, which is I don't know how many, are you aware of the polio here and how it happened in the past? And I don't think you probably, were too young to remember or even understand. I mean, you probably understood the history of it, but too young to understand that how it affected the general public at that time. It was the pandemic of that time. In April 1955, more than 200 children in 5 Western and Midwestern USA states received a polio vaccine in which the process of inactivating the live virus proved to be defective. Within days, there were reports of paralysis, and within a month, for the first mass vaccination program against polio had to be abandoned. Subsequent investigations revealed that the vaccine, manufactured by the California-based family firm of Cutter Laboratories, now known as the Cutter Incident, it's in a book, I read it, so had caused 40,000 cases of polio, leaving 200 children with varying degrees of paralysis, and it killed 10. And to be honest, I think it probably was a little bit more, but I think at that time frame, and the reason why I'm sharing this with you, Scribe, in full disclosure, I think this was the impetus or the start of people's discontent or disbelief or with the government and science in terms of vaccines, because at that time, and many children were actually suffering. Even the president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the president who had polio at that time. And, children were getting it, adults were getting it. And it's kind of people are getting it, they're looking for some means of relieving suffering. So I'm not trying to justify whether the government, did unethical things, which I obviously feel they did in some aspects of it. But what I'm here to really share is that after like 40 or 50 years, I think the science and the process behind how vaccines are developed is much more rigorous, much more safe, and much more effective that the general public can trust. So just trying to share some factual information if possible.
Okay, so you admit that you guys have fucked up in the past, right?
All that talking I did, right? You like,
right.
Listen. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious. It's well-known information that that happened with our government and science. But I don't want to take away the scientific aspect of it as science evolved. I mean, if you look at our science earlier on, not to defend it, we were doing open heart surgery in open theaters or teaching places, and this before we knew anything about germs or viruses or bacteria. But then we begin to understand more about science, and then we now do them in aseptic areas where you wouldn't do open heart surgery in the open public. But I mean, not trying to defend our position, but yeah, I think it's important to start off with our general global citizens about how we work, but how the process has truly evolved. Talk to me.
Okay. No, I mean,
too much.
No, not at all. Actually, you just created way more anxiety than I expected. But
Right.
I'm hoping
just don't cling on to global citizens. Just don't cling on to see I told you. Right? It's true.
Right.
That happened. But there's a lot of things that have happened in our scientific world before we knew about ways to evolve in science. And I'm just trying to share with you and the Scribe and every one of our global citizens today. And I want to thank you guys so much for subscribing and continue to subscribe. And if you haven't, hit that subscribe button at the bottom anyway. But I think the idea for our podcast is to share the awareness and the resolution, right? The awareness is what it is. It's part of, I think, being open enough to say this is the mistakes that we made in the past, and that as we evolve, because it is really crucial right now. It's why we're doing the podcast in itself. Like, we're going to vote in November, and a vaccine is possibly going to come out. So we feel you guys should be informed. Talk to me, Scribe.
No, I agree with that 100%. You know, I like the fact that you're, giving the power back to us, so to speak. You're going to provide the awareness and information and let us decide what to do, when the time comes, which is actually my hope for this whole episode, is that I can, leave today knowing that I'm more informed, in my decision. And
not only you, but our global citizens too.
Everyone who gets to see this. This is really what I want to get out of this today, is to I have a better understanding of the process and what actually happened.
Understood.
So let's jump into it then. I know you have a PowerPoint that you prepared in your.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to completely bore you, but I think facts matter.
That you're gonna kind of go through and.
I'm a scientist, of course. If we're gonna present the facts to the general public, let's start at the beginning. So I want to know: do you think we just go around injecting shit into people? Let's just talk about let's get someone through some of the common misconceptions.
Yeah, I wouldn't say just go around injecting people. I just feel like if it's going to benefit y'all, give you recognition, or
if it's going to benefit y'all. So we still haven't been able to segregate the science from politics. For me, I got into science, Scribe, because I wanted to enhance the quality of people's lives. As a Black man, of course, initially I had distrust, right? But I've learned, I follow the process in there, and I've admitted already that there's been some history that's been detrimental, cost lives to the general public, right? So this is a serious subject. So I take now, being in the process, I haven't been drinking the Kool-Aid at all, right? I've learned what some of the facts are and some of the fallacies that are consumed with our process itself. And today I'm hoping to dismiss any mystical pieces of how a vaccine should be made or approved, and hopefully at the end, that you and any global citizen can really make an informed decision.
Okay, so talk to me about this drug approval process, from concept to...
slide I got here, of course, you gotta have it lit. From concept to vaccine, right? The drug approval process. So one of the two major aspects I want to drive home is safety and efficacy. It has to be proven safe and proven to be effective. That has to be a key point in which we take when we're looking at any vaccine we're going to inject. I mean, you go to the doctor? You go to the
Yeah, I go to the doctor when I need to,
All right, so do you discuss when you take medication, I don't know if you have any surgery or you're going to any injections, do you have that full discussion with him or her?
To be honest, not all the time. I kind of just trust my doctor, depending on, of course, the severity of my ailment. But I'm going through surgery, of course, there's a lot of anxiety with that, and I'll probably have more questions as I have in the past. But in general, no, you know what I mean? I kind of just go there with whatever is wrong with me and, trust that the person who I'm talking to has my best interests at heart, and wants me to get better.
Right, because they're a doctor and they have a doctor's degree, and that part of trust, they've been trained and they are. So I get that complete piece. But I think too, on the patient side, I think there has to be a level of responsibility that if you take and put anything in your body, inject anything in your body, have anything done to your body, that you should be completely informed. Right? And the informed piece allows you to make a very knowledgeable decision on how to move forward. So again, today, one of the key things in taking any vaccine and anything you discuss or describe that you want to ingest or inject or swallow in your body should be safe and effective. Yeah, do we agree on that one point?
100%, yeah.
Okay, do your research. That's why I have the first thing. Do your research. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so in everything, what I really love about the current processes I learned as we went along, we go to slide 2, is that this process is really now confined to a rigorous outline way of approaching development, discovery of a particular process or a particular vaccine. And I think there's 2 methods, right? You tell me what you think. So in discovery process, so one I asked you, do you think we just go around injecting shit into people? And your answer was, or is?
Right, that potentially, maybe. But
Now it, right.
no. I don't think you guys just go around injecting people for no reason. I mean, I think there's,
Right?
I think this is what I think. I think initially, even though things might be, the intention might be good. Say that again.
Why is it you guys?
Let me stop saying you guys. I think, let me say, I say you guys because you're a scientist and you work in the.
Okay, listen, I do work in the field, granted.
Right.
Exposure, right? And I'm just giving you part of the process. So, again, I do advocate you take the vaccine, but I advocate that you be informed so that if you do take anything, this is safe for this sake, right? If you take it informed, you can make an educated decision.
Yes, which is my hope. I want to make it an informed, well-informed, educated decision, as opposed to a decision based on my emotions because of everything that's going on. So, talk to me a little bit about this discovery and development phase and what is in. I hear a lot of terms, the in vitro, in vivo, FDA, what is who does what and what does this all mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think, I think it's important to let me dispel any myths that we go around kidnapping individuals, injecting them with shit in order to
killing animals for no reason and
sci-fi, right? So there is a complete process that's outlined by the Food and Drug Administration, right? Part of that initial process is that when anyone does what we call discovery, we discover their researchers may have existing diseases, not they have, but there are existing diseases. There are, cancer, diabetes.
So what is the because there's so many of them, these different, I think boards or like committees like the FDA, CDC, the WHO. So who does what? What do they all do?
Right. The Food and Drug Administration is a branch of the federal government that does approval of any drug, biologic, or medical device in the industry. So under that segment, whenever you're taking to process or you want to distribute to the general public, anything that you want them to ingest, the topical or inside your body has to be approved by a general process. And they put that in place. So anyone can do research, but to distribute it to the general public, you have to submit information and proof to the Food and Drug Administration that your product, again, as we said, is safe and effective.
Got it. Okay, so there are I guess they regulate all of this to make sure that it's safe for the general public to use.
But it's regulated from the very beginning, so I don't want people to think that we're kidnapping folks and doing experiments on them. That's very sci-fi. But there's multiple researches going on around. Right? I have all kind of advertisements for those, but part of that process is governed by the FDA, what we call good laboratory practices. So when it's done initially, it's not done in people first. It's done usually in a test tube or a petri dish to show that the cells or something has some kind of interaction or works in some way towards the treatment or has an effect. If that seems to work itself out right, then it can move to the next phase. That's considered what we call in vitro, right? Outside the body, right? We don't kidnap people. We do the research or development. If that then shows promising work, and then we can move to the next phase. Any questions around discovery? Right?
No, makes sense. So you mentioned in vitro, right? So what is in vivo? You know what? And what's
so let me preface going to in vivo, right? So in vitro is outside the body, right? Which is how the test initially start. Any drug, any product coming to market initially has to go in vitro first, right? The in vivo piece is a little more contentious, right? Because this is where, so let me just say, before it gets to humans, it has to be proven to be safe and effective, right? And to model the human body, we have to take systems that mimic that. There is no other recourse in the next phase of development from the test tubes and the petri dishes, but to go to animal studies.
So you mean other living
studies, focal point of safety. So go ahead, here we go.
Other living, breathing, pain feeling human beings, not human beings, non-human beings. Just because they resemble us, we get to do shit to them. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying just because, right? Okay. So as I said always, or as I want to say that my purpose in getting into science is to enhance the quality of life, right? To help people relieve from current suffering. So we're not out giving cancer away, right? People develop it, things happen. We try to find means to alleviate the suffering of people. So it's a really humanistic, I believe, approach toward it. In the process, though, I don't know how to describe the sacrifice that animals, I love animals myself, but I know there's no way it should be tested in human beings before we are sure that it's safe. I value human life. I don't want to say more so, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I just know that I would never try. I think the premise is this: I would never try to give you a vaccine or a drug that wasn't proven to be safe first.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I mean,
right? So right or wrong, as a scientist, and I have to admit, and I know many people are going to disagree and maybe not like the idea of it, but part of science is like, if I'm going to, if I just want to test things that happens, I'm going to make or develop things that doesn't really affect the body. But if I'm asking you to ingest, to put on yourself, or to, have affect your body, you should want to make sure I prove it's safe and it's effective for. So the only way injectables are done, or things you ingest, is that we have to show proven that it's safe first. Then we use mice and guinea pigs and monkeys, just non-human primates. Yes. Okay.
I'm not a fan of that part, but I see.
So sorry, PETA.
The value.
PETA, all the other organizations. I know this is just good. We can do modules. We can do computer-generated models of it. We can simulate, but all that's hypothetical and that's anecdotal information. And the danger in doing that is when people get on and politicize science based upon information that comes from these type of studies, like they only tell you that it's proven to kind of have worked. We've seen it, but that's only in animal studies, right? That's what Dr. Fauci, when he got to the press conferences, was really discussing. He was saying that those are only anecdotal information. It's not being tested in humans as of yet. It's not proven to be safe and effective as of yet. And that really matters, right or wrong.
Got it. Okay, so once you guys have taken all that information and you put it together from, let me try to get this right, from the in vitro, which is outside the body, and the in vivo, which is inside the body, which is at that point the animal's body, mostly, right?
Yeah, we try to euthanize the animals to the best of our ability and take care. There are protocols for that also, how we care for the animals, we take care of them, right? Okay. I can't say that there hasn't been incidents of abuse in our industry. no full disclosure. But, people, I think the majority of doctors really have taken, and researchers have taken the approach that our humanistic approach toward doing is developing medicines shouldn't be at the expense, in a sense, of the humanity that we place toward how we treat each other and our animals, in a sense.
Okay, so then what do you do with all that information once you've collected it?
So that data, so once we get the in vitro and in vivo data together, which is part of the FDA requirement, that this is where I want to dispel any kind of, this is a hard art piece because researchers, doctors are at will to publish information that they develop. Whether the information, I believe, carries any merit or weight, you would hope ethically that doctors and researchers would promote information that was only true. And I can't say that they haven't, but the system that I feel enables us to put in place a mechanism to protect the general public is what we call peer review. Right? Okay. And in peer review, in academic publishing, the goal of peer review is to assess the quality of the article submitted for publication in a scholarly journal. Before an article is deemed appropriate to be published in a peer-reviewed journal, it must undergo the following processes. And one of the key things in doing so is to assure that doctors, researchers, anyone that publishes information, it's like Dr. What's her name? Stella Emanuel.
Hydroxychloroquine. Yeah, that's her name.
And then when Dr. Fauci gets on and says that, people quote studies that have been done, because they sell that to you in the news a lot and in the social media a lot. There have been studies done, right? They always say that, right? Studies are done with this many people and this many populations and it's published, right? So the key thing that we should always try to check global citizens behind when anyone says to you, okay, these are published documents, have they been peer reviewed? And the peer review process allows any published information, medical research that makes a claim to be reviewed amongst individuals in their same field or discipline. So, not to discredit other doctors, but if I'm a foot doctor, I shouldn't be reviewing stuff for infectious disease. We are trained the same way. I mean, talk to me, Scribe. I mean, you understand my point?
Yeah, no, I understand.
People who are doctors, but people who are doctors in your field. And I think what the politics show you, they get up and they put a doctor in front of you who speaks to the coronavirus, right? Who may not be an epidemiologist or an infectious disease specialist.
Okay, so what you're saying is, while everyone might have an opinion, it's better to listen to someone who's actually a specialist in that field because they would have more information about that specific, I think, area of the whatever it is that you're trying to research, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about the coronavirus, right? The coronavirus, the experts in the coronavirus should be people who are epidemiologists.
So epidemiologists are the ones that actually study pandemics and viruses.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then infectious disease specialists who are?
What are they called?
Well, they're infectious disease specialists who understand the virus. The mechanism works, right? Who understands infectious disease, like things like bacteria, how they get in and infect the body and cause damage, right?
Okay.
And the spread of it, and the other pieces. So together, they formulate this team that allows you to have a response to any outbreak, in a sense. So not to discredit any other doctor, but I think that when they shuffle doctors in front of you in the news and tell you that this is a doctor, but he's not a specialist in the field, and that they're, more importantly for the peer review piece, not to spend too much time on that aspect of it, is that when people say there's papers that have been published, have they been peer reviewed? Because the process to peer review a document and then get it published. Now, the published piece is key, global citizens, right? Because it needs to be published in an established, well-accredited journal. And there are only two powerhouses, or close to two powerhouses. There are other few journals that are respected, but the ones that have the, I believe the process that's more rigorous, in terms of reviewing the data and assuring its accuracy for the general public are the New England Journal of Medical Medicine, right? And also the Journal of American Medical Association. So it's JAMA, or Journal of American Medical Association, and the New England Journal of Medicine. Those two publications, if you get your paper or your article published in those two, then I believe based upon the rigor, you can trust the outcome of the data.
Got it. Okay. So once all that information has been collected, it is then sent off to get peer reviewed, and the New England Journal of Medicine and JAMA. What does JAMA stand for again? I missed that.
Journal of American Medical Association.
Journal of American Medical Association.
And then one is for the UK or the European country. So together they have a collaborative process that allows anyone that wants to publish a paper, especially based on something as serious as an infectious disease outbreak, should have their data reviewed by people who are of their same peer quality.
Okay.
Review of the actual data in itself. They're impartial reviewers. They're rotated. The peer reviewers check the manuscript, the accuracy of the data. So these are mechanisms to assure that any information that's then finally agreed upon and submitted to the general public has went through a certain level of scrutiny.
Got it. Okay. I like that. I like the fact that we get to have people in that industry look over it, review it. And I like the fact that those people are rotated, and that there's actually publications that are known for, giving a good peer review. And at this point, nothing has been injected into a person, right?
Except for animals.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, a person. But
some of the data, it's the anecdotal data.
Got it.
We still don't know how to work in humans, and that question still remains. How much do you take the drug through the process before you start injecting it into humans?
So, what is this investigational new drug?
So this is part of the process.
Okay. What happens in this this step of the process? You've now gotten peer reviewed, and what happens after that?
Now, let me just say that you don't always have to have your data peer reviewed. It just adds strength to it. Right?
Got it.
You go from gathering the data, but you still have to follow the process, right? So this investigation of new drug is that any developed drug you want to, commercialize and distribute to the general public has to have these elements inside of the process or inside of your application in order to get your drug approved to move to the next phase, which is clinical trials. And in clinical trials, it volunteers from the human population.
Okay, so in this investigational new drug, is this like an application that you submit?
It is.
Okay.
So all the developers, all researchers, they put together the animal studies that shows that it's safe, right? Because the safe piece is, there's two components, safety and efficacy. The safe piece comes from the animal studies and the research to show that it has some type of promise before it can get to the human population, right? That's part of the data you need to put into the application. Next is the manufacturing information, which is really important later down the line. It's kind of where I make my money in terms of business, is that once it gets through the process and approved, you have to mass manufacture the actual drug for distribution to the public. Remember, there's 330 million Americans in our country that may receive, I'll say a population of, say 200 million receive the drug, right? But it's still, you need to mass manufacture that at a large scale, safe and effectively, right? The last piece are their protocols. So before it grows into humans or people volunteer to start getting injected with the drug, they make any researcher any pharmaceutical company, manufacturer, write out in detail how you're going to administer the drug, who are the population of people you're going to target, where you're going to do the work at, how you're going to control it, how you're making it safe. This is how the protections are in place to make sure that volunteers who end up taking the drug prior to clinical trials have a safe and effective process also. It's a mandate in the investigation of a new drug. And finally, any prior data for human research and the investigators that are involved in the process. So these are the elements that go into the actual application.
Wow, that sounds like it's a very rigorous process. I like the fact that you even have to have,
You don't believe that. I know
right.
what you believe, but this is to me, right? This is before we have anything injected into anyone. I just want to make that clear. So what I want to also make clear is to people, don't be fooled by politicians who talk to you about data at this stage, because it's still anecdotal data. It may look good, right? It may look good, but it still takes time. And that process right there can sometimes take from 2 to 6 months.
Wow. So you've collected your data, you're confident about your data.
So I went to January, now in what? September.
We're in September now,
So
so
9 months. So most of the development have just now taken place. This is why you hear a lot about people going into clinical trials in the news.
okay. So now you're submitting this, I guess, IND to the FDA?
It's FDA, Food and Drug Administration. This is the branch of federal government that controls the review of any drug you want to bring to market.
So what does the FDA do with that information? What does that look like?
Yeah, for drug products, right? So the overall branch is FDA, but the division is called the Center for Drug and Evaluation Research. So that you submit your IND with all that data from the animal studies to show that it's safe, and any other additional information, your protocol for how you want to move into testing humans. They review over everything. They got 30 days to review the process itself, and they look and make sure according to the requirements that there anything's missing from there. You seem that you still are putting people at risk, and they're not sure. You have to have everything outlined, right? The participants, they make sure that the participants aren't exposed to any unreasonable damage that may cause death or harm.
Got it. Okay. So now you've got all this information, and you're going to talk about how you plan on mass producing this product. And
we're not at production yet. Remember, we're at the stage where we're just beginning to go into whether or not we can start injecting it into humans.
Okay. So now you're just trying to prove that it's actually safe.
They have to prove that it's safe for us to start putting it into human beings, right?
Got it.
All that data needs to be gathered and organized for a review process, and then there are people in the division that divide your application up and review over each section to make sure it coincides with the requirements.
Okay, I like that. And then, so
with it, they reject it. If there's issues, they give you a chance to go back and fix it. If you cannot, then they will reject your application. And as I was saying earlier, I don't know if I talked to you about it, but let's talk about the ratio that actually get through. So about 5 in 5,000 out of 5,000 applications actually get through.
Wow. Okay.
Trial. We're not just allowing any drug. People out there doing research, of course, but the rigor to get it past and injected into humans is much more. It's not like any of the trials we did earlier when we had polio and the other maybe unscrupulous ways we were approaching doing our science research in the past.
Right. Okay, and this is still in like the testing phase of everything, right?
This is right prior to going into your clinical trials.
Got it.
So,
okay.
Yeah, but it takes a lot of rigor here, right? To get past this phase, to get into humans, I mean, you have to have shown with unequivocal proof that it's safe, with some efficacy. And this is why that it has to migrate out of animals into humans at some point in time, because to show that it's effective, it has to show in people that you either have, cured disease, make you immune to it, or as a preventative.
Got it. Okay. So the next step after you get approved will be the human trials, I'm assuming?
You will. You start what they call phase 3 of the clinical trials, clinical research, right?
So clinical research is when they start injecting it into people?
It is.
Like volunteers, I'm assuming?
It is volunteers initially at first.
Okay.
Volunteers are healthy humans that volunteer to make sure this is more safety. This is more aspects under the safety. It's about 20 to 80 participants. And it's up to about several months that they take this, they do this first phase. But the studies focus on the safety of the medication and the actual treatment of it. And usually if you got to this phase, you've proven, it's a 70% success rate. But because any of the patients that show some kind of effect, has an effect on no matter if it's out of 80, if 1 or 2 show some effect, you have to document that, and it has to be part of your data. And so when they look overall, those are what they start to designate as what we call side effects.
Interesting.
And you weigh. And then one of the important things too is that sometimes the drugs move on, and this is an important point. You may weigh whether the side effects are more, are okay to deal with as opposed to the benefits you get from it.
Got it.
So some drugs, you see how they always go through drugs for approval. They tell you some of the side may cause headache,
Right, that whole speech.
But they have to, as part of the regulation, disclose what the side effects are.
Got it. So talk to me a little bit about hydroxychloroquine and, so it went through all these phases and then...
No, that's a great point. So, and this is really important when you're trying to take these, what they are touting as coronavirus cures. So initially we know that the hydroxychloroquine, they say it was approved, right? It was approved, and it was approved for safety and efficacy for malaria.
Okay.
But it wasn't approved specifically for the coronavirus. And in any drug, so any drug that's approved for one indication, if you're going to use that drug for a new indication, meaning to treat a new type of disease, you need to take it back through the process of the IND. You need to submit it as a new investigational drug. Now, not necessarily for the safety piece of it, right? Because we know it's already safe. What I don't know if it's effective in treating humans. We know that hydroxychloroquine was safe because people have been taking it, like they were saying, for 40 years. Why not? It should be okay, right? That's the safe piece of it. But we didn't know whether it was effective or not on the coronavirus. That's the piece that they kind of skim over. They tout that it's safe. Why not? What could it hurt? That's what he said, right? But a couple took part of hydroxychloroquine, which was it was a derivative of it, which happened to be fish tank cleaner. And the wife died, and the husband was in critical condition. Because people listen to you. So what you say politically matters. But again, here's where I'm trying to segregate the politics from the science piece of it.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Very, very informative. I had no idea that if you have, what do you say, a new indication, so if you're trying to use the drug for something other than its intended purpose, you have to submit a new IND.
Any drug. Any drug. If it wasn't in part of the initial application when you got it approved, you can't go around using that shit for other things.
Got it.
Even though you know it's safe. Remember, there's 2 components to releasing the drug, safety and efficacy, and no problem with not going back and redoing all the safety studies, right? No problem with that. But then now give me a protocol that shows me what patients you're going to look at, where you're going to target. Not luckily, I don't know how to phrase this, but in a pandemic, you don't hurt for participants.
Right.
There are many people who had the coronavirus. So they were able to take hydroxychloroquine and test it against many volunteers because a lot of people were infected by the virus right now.
Mm-hmm.
But hydroxychloroquine didn't pass phase 1. And the reason it didn't pass phase 1 is because it wasn't effective. It didn't work. So no matter what they tell you, hydroxychloroquine didn't pass phase 1 because out of the 20 to 80 participants, it didn't show to be effective against the coronavirus, even though it was safe. So that's why Dr. Stella Emanuel and whoever she was, when she touted about this coronavirus vaccine and having this out, I was looking for the people who she said she cured to come forward. I wonder why that we didn't see any of those people come by and say, yeah, I was cured. I mean, a lot of them should be coming forward right now, especially if it worked. Any vaccine that works and people are cured from it are going to come by and use it as a testimonial. Of course they are. But crickets.
It makes sense. So, you can...
Sorry, I'm trying to get...
While the drug might have been safe, it wasn't effective in treating the coronavirus.
It wasn't effective in treating coronavirus.
Friday. Awesome. Well, we're going to take a break.
Neither is disinfectant or sunshine. I mean, I'm not just saying.
Or sun rays or any of that. Thank you so much, Pharaoh. I mean, I'm starting to feel a lot better about this, man.
No, I don't want to bore you because there's a lot of research. I'm sorry, global citizens, but this is information I think is important, right?
Right.
The three factors, right? Discovery in test tubes, petri dishes. Unfortunately, sorry, Peter, in animals. That data then is reviewed, and if it seems that it works there based upon criteria, we can approve it to move to the phase where we try clinical research and inject it into humans. But it needs to be proven to be safe and effective. So that's my preaching to the choir.
Love it. So what are we going to talk about when we come back? What's next?
So let's go through the phases. So in this next part, global citizens is really important. So please tune back into this piece, because this will tell you before November 3rd whether or not you should take any vaccine that they got to give to you. So come back and get everything you need to know about what you should understand before you take any vaccine. Yeah?
Got it. All right. We'll be back shortly, guys. Tune in for the next installment.
Stay woke.
Stay woke.
Stay woke. Stay woke.
This is more deadly. This is 5 per, this is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%, so this is deadly stuff.
We show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless.
Not just older
Yeah, exactly.
people, to plenty of young people.
Young people are almost immune to this disease.
It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus.
We lose thousands and thousands of people a year to the flu. We don't turn the country off.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.